Yes, guys, welcome back to Chasing Green Arrows. We are live and I am joined by two very special guests. But before I introduce them, let me just tell you, do not go anywhere because in about 5 minutes time, maybe 2 or 3, we're going to be reviewing my team. And then about 25 minutes time, we're going to be looking at the best captaincy options between game week 1 and game week 10. Now, maybe when you see those options, you might just say to yourself, do you know what? I can afford to go without Haaland, or I can afford to go without Salah, or maybe I need Cole Palmer. So we're going to be reviewing that in today's show. Thank you all for hitting those buttons, like and subscribe nice and early as well. And hello to everyone watching on Catch Up. Drop a comment, everyone live in the chat. But first, hello to this evening's guests, as always. First up, all the way from San Diego, it's Mr. Dean Jones. Dean, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good morning, mate. It's 11 o'clock here. So, the sun's nicely shining in front of me. Hope you both well.
How was the move?
The move's good, yeah. So you can see I've got a bit of a different background now. It's just a blank corner that I'm in at the moment, but I'll sort this out. But yeah, the move has gone very cleanly, and I even got finally a new phone. So I'm on an American contract now. It was a nightmare to get it, but my phone broke last week as well, my English one. So I was scrambling around, and yeah, managed to get one on Saturday. So it's all good. New house, new phone, new season. Let's go.
New tan as well. Love that.
It's coming on a bit, isn't it?
Yeah. It's 11 a.m. where you are. It's around 11 p.m. where Big Man Backer is, right? Big Man, you're like 12 hours from Dean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks for having me, Johnny. Hello, Dean. Hello, and welcome to all the listening viewers. It's 11 p.m. over here. Generally, I'm up till late, so it's an all right time for me to stream. I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight, Johnny. I see we're going to be dissecting your team, so I'm sat here with knives and forks in my hand, looking to rip through your team like a surgeon at his absolute peak. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Oh, I look forward to that. I can't wait for these comments. You guys in the chat can have a look at my team. I am going to just add one caveat to my team. It was my first draft that I made within hours of the game coming out. I haven't touched my first draft since, and I've told myself I'm only going to allow myself one draft a week. And I do this pretty much every preseason. And every time I'm on wildcard, I'm not one of these people that wildcards and changes their team every hour for a week. I think about changing my team every minute of every day, and the same applies for preseason, but actually clicking the buttons and making the changes clouds my thinking if I just do too many. So I'll be on like version 4 by the time I lock in. And version 2, I might present you next week, but I am presenting the team that came in straight off the bat. So just quickly, you two, what draft are you both on? Like,
I haven't touched mine, mate. I've just left it for now. There's no point. There's no point me messing around with it. I might as well just leave it until the week before the season starts. Like I've like looked at it a bit. I'm like more looking at players and considering who I am going to get. But I know already like the first draft is not going to be it. I'm even thinking like, I'm reading like Jack Grealish is like the fittest player come back into preseason at Man City. Jeremy Doku, like reading about him the other day. And I was like, you know what? I might even have players like that coming into my team. So I'm going to wait a little bit before
I like Doku as a punt, 6.5, yeah, or Grealish. One of them's going to be starting.
Yeah, one of them will start, yeah.
Big Man, what draft are you on? I mean, I reckon if we were to do a poll on people to answer with accuracy and honesty in the chat, what draft are you on? I reckon most will have made 10 plus drafts. Big Man, I know you've made 2 minimum. Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that because I tend to consume a lot of content in preseason, it makes me want to change my drafts more often than I do over the course of the season, because generally over the course of the season, I don't consume as much FPL content that I do in preseason. So yeah, I mean, my drafts, they do change like, every now and then, which is not exactly every day, but let's say after every 3 or 4 days. I reckon I'm on about my 4th or 5th at this point, which I think is fine because, there was one which I made with Haaland. There was one which I made with Haaland plus Salah. Then there's one which I made with double Liverpool defense. Similarly, there's one I had with Palmer as well as Trent and Salah. So there are different drafts that I have, and I'm sort of what I'll do is I'll sort of repeat this. I'll consume all the content before the season starts. I'll repeat this exercise, let's say 24 hours before the deadline, and once I have like 4 or 5 drafts ahead of me, I will look at the differences and then I'll just sort of figure out which I think is the strongest, and I'll just roll with that.
Yeah, fair. No, there's. Do you know what? It's got to be whatever works best for you. For some, it will be tweaking their teams every hour, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, I will definitely be making a Haaland, no Haaland team. And let's show you my team. The bigger mission, and then, there's always that one player that you can't reach to or can't get. And you've just mentioned it, big man. One of your drafts featured Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer is a player I very much want in this team. And for me, he is the biggest miss that I don't have. And I include Erling Haaland in that, by the way. I don't necessarily have the urge to go, I have to squeeze Haaland in. I've got Salah instead for captaincy, and we'll talk about that later. And I've got Foden to cover City's attack. I don't have Cole Palmer, and I don't think a player like Nkunku, because we don't know enough about him in a Chelsea shirt, can cover that or those points. Although we hope Nkunku is a 6.5 million midfielder listed playing as a forward. But just to rattle through my team top to bottom, my keepers rotate really nicely. Again, my second draft will probably include Sanchez from Chelsea. We don't know his first choice, but we think he will be first choice. But at the moment, Flecken and Henderson rotate really well. From their first 10 games, they'll face 8 home games, and they don't play any of the big 6 in that time. Trent is in there. He feels like someone I have to go in with because I just love the Liverpool fixtures. Then it's cheap 4.5 defenders, Mikalenko, Burn and Dunk. Although Barco has now come to the fore in my thinking. He's a 4 million Brighton defender. I can save 0.5 there. Looks like he's going to start over Stupinan unless they buy a left back. Stupinan is injured. And again, Maddison feels risky because they've got so many left backs, but surely he's going to be a starter. And he offers more upside than a Konza. Before we talk about my midfield and my forward line, I guess we should just discuss my defence. So, Dean, I'll come to you first. Like, what's your initial impression from that back 7, if you like?
Yeah, I mean, I knew you'd go Trent, but obviously I never go with Trent at the prices that he's put up at. But I totally get it. So, you haven't gone Haaland, I have, and having Haaland means I'm not going to have Trent. So that's my initial big thing that I won't have. I think Maddison. We'll have to wait to see. I mean, obviously, you're going to judge it over the course of pre-season and what role he's actually playing and stuff. But if he fulfills the role that has been dressed up for him, then I think he'll be a really good pick. I don't really like Brighton's start to the season. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I would go Dunk just because I think that's very unpredictable, their first 3 games. Everton really need to get off to a good start this season, so I can even see them struggling to get past them. Man United and Arsenal is what it is. But goalkeepers, I think that they're good picks for now. Again, you're obviously going to judge that as it opens up. But there's not too much to not like about it, mate, because I think you've played it pretty down the middle and pretty safe.
Yeah, big man.
I like the goalkeepers. I think they rotate really well. Like you mentioned, I think if the Chelsea goalkeepers aren't an option and if he sort of struggled to figure out who's first choice for the start of the season, then I think I'm very likely to roll with the same combo. I would give probably 9.5 out of 10 to the goalkeepers. You've done well. I mean, the problem with starting with one is that, of course, then you sort of have to play him through the rough fixtures as well. But with Flecken and Henderson, they sort of rotate well. So you should be, let's say, good for a few clean sheets till the first time that you wildcard, which is probably going to be after 8 to 10 weeks anyway, right? So this will sort of sort that headache out well. Trent, I really like. I mean, I think he's been every single one of my drafts. I really like him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I don't think that not owning Trent at 7 million is advisable, simply because Liverpool's run, I mean, Ipswich, Brentford, United, Forest, Bournemouth, Wolves, Crystal Palace, those are the first 7 fixtures. I mean, Trent can easily get a 15-pointer over there, and that would be enough to justify his price tag. I can see Liverpool doing well in terms of clean sheets as well. I was actually having a look at some of the underlying data from Feyenoord last season, and their right back actually was averaging an XGI per 90.4, which is very, very healthy. So if a similar role is given to Trent as well, then expect plenty of fireworks in the opening weeks.
Nice.
So Trent is there for me. I think where we sort of differ in terms of our strategy is you're placing a bit too much faith in some of the cheaper defenders, which I personally don't.
Yeah, you've got like Gvardiol and an Arsenal defender in there, and I've got an array of 4.5s.
Yeah, so I think if you want to go difference, I would at least pick one of them, even if you want to trust the 4.5 to cover up that third slot. But I think having 4 defenders in that price range to cover up for your second and third defender is a bit of a stretch, and it's not something I would recommend because I think it just leaves the defense a bit too short. So I would have one of Gvardiol or an Arsenal defender, depending on whichever one you like.
I am looking at when I make my second draft of still only going Trent and then 4.55s. And I guess my argument to that is, or 4.5s and 4s with Barco, I'm saving money at the back to get that one extra better attacker in. But also, I just think there's so many good 4.5s. Like I think Mykolenko, Everton were a top 5 defence last season. Palace were a top 5 defence as well, by the way. I have thought about maybe spending extra on my goalkeeper and going for like a Pope at 5 million or even a Raya at 5.5 as a way of covering, say, the Arsenal back line. I'm not set on 2 rotating 4.5s. I might go and splash the cash on a 5 or a 5.5 just to cover that very good defence in, say, Newcastle or Arsenal. I'm slightly worried about Burn, although I do think he'll be a starter because Kelly exists and also because Livramento and Lewis Hall can both play left back too.
I think if you want to go down that route, then you just simply go Raya. I still think Raya is being a bit, let's say, ignored by the Twitter temper. I mean, he's still like 20% owned in FPL, but I assume a lot of them are auto pick teams because when you run through, teams on Twitter or YouTube or Instagram, a lot of people you'll see don't own Raya, right? And I think Raya 5.5 is fine.
Only Turner is more highly owned than Raya.
Yeah, but I assume most of them are auto pick teams, right? Because
maybe.
he's one of the favorite auto pick players that the auto team selects. I mean, he's most clean sheets last season. He's cheaper than the Arsenal defenders, actually. So he's not a bad pick at 5.5 million. I think if I was spending more, then I would go there because I still don't have that faith in Newcastle defense to have a keeper who's going to play week in, week out. With Dan Burn, like, let's say if he's first choice, sure, you can play him in some of the better fixtures, but I don't want Pope week in, week out. Newcastle's defense, they collapsed at the end of the season. So I would want to see a bit more before actually having enough confidence to have a keeper who's going to play week in, week out.
Gee, what if Arsenal, well, they are going to sign Calafiori. Like, there's not really much doubt about that at this moment in time. What if his price is 5.5? Because what if he does drop in? But because I don't think will he be 6?
He's not going to be 6. No, it'll be 5. He could even be 5. Like Timber's 5.5. I think Zinchenko and Tomiyasu might be 5 or 5.5. So
that could be guaranteed. Left back for Arsenal throughout the season is a good pickup if he comes in at that value.
Do you think? So I was going to ask you the same question before moving on to my mids team because I know you would have been writing about this move. Do you think he comes straight into the team game week 1, 2, 3 as the starting left back? Because I've no doubt he's being signed with a guarantee that he's going to be in the first 11. He'll put pressure on Gabriel as the left centre back, although I think Gabriel keeps that slot for the time being. And he prefers to play left centre back than left back, but he is formerly a left back. He's so comfortable on the ball. He'll invert at Arsenal as well, potentially, and he can invert. Do you think he'll play over Timber, for example, at left back, or Zinchenko in the easier games at left back? Is Calafiori going to be in that first 11 early?
I think he is, mate. Yeah, I don't think they're spending this much money on somebody to like ease him in through the season. And he's been on holiday. He's had his break. He's finished with all that now. That's why this transfer is suddenly picking up. And
Calafiori, girlfriend.
This is the perfect profile player for what Arteta's trying to build going forward in terms of an inverted fullback. So that's what Arsenal are dressing him up as, a better version of Zinchenko, basically. I would be very surprised if Calafiori is bought and then isn't in the team for the first week of the season. As I say, if we'll get a sign because he'll be involved in pre-season, maybe not obviously the early America games, but certainly the ones that are after the first couple, if this deal is tied up this week, as we're expecting. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because obviously Raya is a good way into the Arsenal defence at the moment, at 5.5. But Calafiori might be a better way in there, depending on what he comes in at.
Do you know, Calafiori was my favourite Italy player in the Euros. I absolutely adore him. I see he's just come back from holiday in Greece where I think he got braids in his hair. I've been there. I've done that. I've also hit the age of 22 and said to my girlfriend, I'm moving to London, so we're going to have to break up. And he's absolutely ticked that box.
You are Calafiori.
I'm Calafiori 2.0. Just happened to be 15 years older and nowhere near as good at football. But yeah, the move to London has definitely triggered the breakup with the girlfriend, which I think is brilliant, because the girlfriend was so attached to him. If you saw them on the final day of the season for Bologna, Calafiori was interviewed by this DAZN reporter, and she comes onto the pitch to interview man of the match or whatever he was, player of the season, and he's getting interviewed, and the girlfriend comes out of nowhere and starts stroking his arm and kissing him. In fact, it's really awkward in front of this really attractive reporter. She's just proper tactile, and it's like, oh no, he wants the bright lights of London. He wants to be single. So yeah, thought that was funny. But yeah, I like it. Let's talk about my midfield. Backer, I've gone for double Newcastle attack here with the addition of Gordon and Isak. I'm trying to look at these players in their own right as FPL assets. And when I look at them in isolation, I want them absolutely both in my team because the fixtures are there, the price points are cheap, and Newcastle created more big chances than any team in the season than any team in the league last season.
I mean, I know how hot you are on Gordon. Isak is more or less, I think he's going to be in my team. He's a nailed selection, I think, if he stays fit. Yeah. I really like him. Gordon is all right. I mean, Gordon, I think, is a good pick. I, for one, prefer Eze for 0.5 less. Do you? But I think Gordon will do well as well. So it's not a pick that, I have any problems with. I think Newcastle will start well to begin with. And yes, there's potential as well. I don't really look at Gordon as a player who's very, very explosive, but he's going to continue to tick along with the points. So, yeah, I think you'll be fine owning him.
Okay, the 4.5 options in midfield are slim pickings. França offers attacking threat when he's on the pitch, but he won't be a starter for Palace. But he's got promise and pedigree, so I could go for like a Harry Winks in that slot just for the 90-minute guarantee. Salah and Foden feel like locks for me, and Nkunku I've kind of mentioned already. My big question is, I also like an Eze. Like Backer's gone big on Eze. I know why you like him because of the fixtures, because he's been the talisman at Palace, but also he comes with penalty appeal. And I wonder, I could easily swap, say, a Solanke out and go 4.5 forward, and then França up to an Eze. Like that's very possible. Dean, who do you prefer? Forget the position. Someone like Solanke as a 7.5 forward versus Eze as a 7 mid is actually a real debate I've got. Where do you lie on that? Because I'm still torn.
Well, it depends where Eze's playing, doesn't it? Because he's probably not going to be a Crystal Palace player by then. I mean, there's a
really. Do you think there's a good chance?
There's a good chance. I mean, I'd be amazed if someone didn't try to get him out of there. The only thing that kind of saves Palace is this release clause because it's a lot of money, right? Was it 60 million plus 8? I think, or something like that. So it's a lot of money. But Tottenham are looking at players of that profile, and they really like Eze. And I'm told it's not beyond realms that that's the player that they go and make kind of their big signing of the summer. And then then you've got to weigh up, is Eze a better asset or a worse asset at Tottenham than he is at Crystal Palace? And that's actually quite a difficult one because obviously it's a better team. There should be more chances, but also there's more pressure. There's more competition for your spot. And you don't
probably
know how
not taking penalties either.
Probably not on penalties. So actually, if he makes a transfer, I don't think you would have him. If he stays at Crystal Palace, then I think with those 3 fixtures lined up, I do think he's a good pick. And I think that there's also a good chance that when the season starts, he possibly is still a Crystal Palace player. So
when does the window close?
I don't know if it's 1st of Sep or 31st of August, but like
so it's going to be two, 3 games. Yeah,
so you get 2 or 3 games out of him, and it could easily be that the Eze deal goes down to the wire and Spurs or whoever it is holds out until
Spurs,
then.
It always does, doesn't it, with Levy? But could Man City come in for him, Dean? Is there? Because I've seen that rumor with De Bruyne replacement, and does De Bruyne go? But is that someone Pep could look at? You think?
I don't think so. I mean, he's looked at him before. He likes him. There's no doubt about that. The City like Eze, but they also like players like Dani Olmo. And I actually think that if De Bruyne was to go, then Dani Olmo might be a better option to come in there, because I know that they have had eyes on him. We'll have to see what happens with De Bruyne. He's known that there could be a massive offer on the table for him for some time, but there's nothing formal got underway there yet. Certainly not a player to be considering, though, obviously, for your FPL team for once. Solanke obviously holds appeal. Again, those 3 fixtures, they are very nice, aren't they? Forest, Newcastle, Everton's very appetising. Solanke, only at 10% ownership, is also pretty good. Obviously, you're not keeping the captaincy on him, but you probably could and get a decent return from him.
Yeah. Baka, where do you stand on the whole Eze Solanke thing? If Eze leaves, game week 1, he's not going to be as attractive, even if he's at Man City or Spurs. Like, we like Eze in the Palace shirt early. And if he's not there, you're likely, I guess, to move off. But do you feel strongly, as things stand, that he's the better asset than Solanke? And maybe we can do a poll, choose one, Solanke or Eze.
I think you can sort of have a very similar debate about Tony as well. For example, if Tony leaves Brentford, does he become a worse asset? Does he become a better asset? I think both Tony and Eze are better assets at the clubs they are, because simply because of the minutes that they're going to have, nailed for minutes, nailed for penalties, nailed for starts.
Yeah.
And they'll be the talisman. While at other clubs, while they will be playing in better teams, they may not be as integral to their teams, right? That's what I would assume until I see any further. So I think if Eze is rumored to leave by game week 1, or if there are concrete leads on him leaving, then I think I'll probably move off him before game week 1. Coming to your Solanke versus Eze debate, I think I like Solanke as well. It's a difficult one because Solanke could easily do well as well. I haven't seen him in any of the teams, to be very honest. I think he's ignored by the vast majority of managers, and I think he can continue to tick along. I would just side with Eze due to the opening fixtures, I think. But if you want to go with Solanke, I don't necessarily mind.
It is worth noting Solanke's 10% owned only. It's a proper different. It feels like a differential, and then
Eze is around 33.
Plus. Yeah,
33.
Yeah, there's a big difference. And with the new BPS, look, it will probably favour Eze too. But Solanke does have a lot of shots, so the +2 there, and he actually gets fouled quite a bit too. So again, Solanke could see a boost knowing he's in a team which doesn't perform that well in BPS. So when he does score, expect bonus points. The other player I just want to touch on before we move to captaincy, guys, and if you could hit those buttons, only 40 of you have hit the like button, and I know there's over 200 watching. So please show your support to the channel by hitting both subscribe with a notification bell and is Ollie Watkins. We can see his ownership there. Like, he's the most highly owned player in the game, along with Cole Palmer. They're both at 56%, Isak at 54. Only 3 players above 50. I'm set on Isak. I'm not set on Watkins. And if I didn't have Watkins in my team, I could probably find the money to get Cole Palmer in. Now, it's not quite simple as the Solanke-Eze discussion, because Solanke and Eze is only 0.5 between them. Watkins versus Palmer is $1.5 million. Therefore, it's not quite as simple as A or B, but it's close to that. I could make it work. Speak to me about Ollie Watkins, Dean, because last season, we all were on him at certain times, and he often trolled us when we didn't own him. He was unbelievable, but he's not actually getting the love in terms of content creators this season. I know he's 56% owned, and the masses are picking him, but the vast majority of my mates on FPL Twitter, for example, are ignoring this guy, and I'm not completely sure why.
No, and I think you're probably right to go the other way on it, because, that could be your edge. If you're going to try and have something a bit different, then you might as well go for someone who's not that much of a gamble, is he? The fixtures are reasonable. Even the Arsenal one is fine.
Last year.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Villa are perfectly capable of scoring against Arsenal. I also think he'll have a new confidence and swagger about him going into this season. I think he's probably looking to take his career to the next level now. There's already been some interest in him. Chelsea have been sniffing around him a little bit. I don't think that Ollie Watkins will be at Villa beyond this season if he has another good year. And I think that'll probably be his aim. He's got Champions League football to look forward to. He wants to be the main man for Aston Villa. I think he want to hit the ground running. So I haven't gone there, but that's because I've got Haaland up front and I'm going with Isak as my second choice. But I could certainly see why people would be going for Watkins. And I think those content creators that aren't a bit mad.
Yeah, big man. What do you take? What's your take on Watkins? Because I know he's not in your team, but someone you'll be thinking about. What's the reason why people are swerving him at 9 million? Like he arguably has been massive. If he'd come in at 10 million, no one would have bat an eyelid.
Yeah, I mean, I might fall in the mad category because I've been ignoring him so far, and I haven't had him in any of my drafts. Gianni, I think okay, you mentioned that you were set in Isak. I was sort of want to have this discussion with you now that we're discussing your team. How set are you on Solanke?
I'm not. I wouldn't say I am. I'd say from the front three, the only one I'm set on is Isak. I do also. I don't mind the idea of getting Cole Palmer in this team, and if I do, using both Solanke and or Watkins is probably the route out. Like there are 5.5 million forwards in João Pedro or Adam Armstrong, and I could have one of them in my team.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So my question to you is, now that you've sort of debated as a Solanke, Palmer, Watkins, I think a very like for like comparison is Solanke versus Watkins. Do you think Watkins is worth 1.5 million necessarily over Solanke?
Yeah,
I'm not that sure. I think it's very close. So my first thought when I see this team is that if you, for example, downgrade Watkins to 5.5 forward, you can get Eze for França, and you can get a Guardiol or an Arsenal defender for any of the 4.5 defenders, and that would significantly strengthen the squad. In my humble opinion, not necessarily because I have three big at the back. We still won't have the same team, and I don't have Foden or Gordon for that matter. So it'll still
but
be
it's similar shape.
Very different.
Two good defenders.
I mean, the structure will be similar, but like the players are still very different. So I think, for example, if you compare Watkins with Watkins and França, or let's say a Dunk with a Guardiol or Gabriel and Eze and João Pedro, I think the second combination is far stronger. It gives you more balance. So while Watkins is a great pick and he will continue to take along with the points, so will Eze and so will your defense. And it will give you an extra playable attacker as well to cover for, let's say, Nkunku's poor fixture in game week 1.
Yeah, there's just something telling me I want that money invested in the front line. I don't necessarily want that 5 point. Do you know what I like about having Solanke and Watkins there? It's the easy switch to a Liverpool forward. If I want to jump on, say, Darwin or Gakpo, because I think that's starting, maybe even from game week 1, by the way, the 7.5 Liverpool attackers we're not speaking about because we've got no idea from the 4 which 2 are starting alongside Salah. And they're all 7.5, those 4. 2 are mids in Jota and Diaz, and 2 are forwards in Gakpo and Darwin. And I feel like triple Liverpool with Trent, Salah on one of those 7.5 assets, and I have a feeling it's a Gakpo, could be worth it. And going Solanke and Watkins just allows that very easy switch. But yeah, I hear you. And the second defense is on my mind.
You have the 7.5 price point with Solanke. You can just get, let's say, if Darwin is starting, you can get Darwin for Solanke. I mean, that option is still there. Have you given any thought to doubling up on the Liverpool defense? Because it's something that I've been considering very strongly, especially if we don't really figure out which of the Liverpool attackers to go for, barring Salah.
Interesting. Do you know what? Their defensive data from last season's good. They're second or third in a lot of metrics, like big chances against them and goals conceded and stuff like that. They're always top 5. But no, I think Trent is enough for me. I mean, if they go and sign Dean, is there any chance they sign Guehi, like 4.5 million defender nailed for Liverpool? Could he actually leave Palace and go Liverpool?
They're one of the teams that have been linked. Obviously, like Liverpool were linked with Lenny Yoro as well before he ended up joining Man United. They've been linked with Simican and a couple of other centre-backs recently. So I feel like there's like the core of that Liverpool team, a CDM and a centre-back is probably 2 of the areas I'd be looking at for them to potentially strengthen. So there's definitely some argument for that to be the case, yeah.
Yeah, no, double Liverpool defence, I guess. Are you looking at Robbo then, Baka? Is that something you've been looking? Is he 6 or 6.5, Robbo?
He's 6. He's 6. Yeah, he's the same price as Van Dijk. So I've been looking at him, but I mean, irrespective of that, one of the main reasons why I'm looking there is, I mean, just let me read the fixtures once again. Ipswich, Brentford, Man United, Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth, Wolves, Crystal Palace. I mean, that's the first 7. Don't you want triple Liverpool there? I mean, irrespective of defense or attack. I mean, I want triple Liverpool. With
but what if they're not good anymore? What if Arne Slot's no good? You don't even know what we're getting from Liverpool at the moment.
I mean, perhaps he's not as good, but at this point in time, I would rather back the fixtures and assume that they'll still be good enough, irrespective of how good or bad the manager is.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of being devil's advocate here, but I think that would be my main fear of going all in on Liverpool is like they're not making any big signings at the moment. They're not I've been reading like on obviously for my job, I'm tracking everything in terms of the actual news, but I also like to gauge fan reaction to how they're feeling and stuff. And I was watching like a Liverpool fan channel a couple of days ago. And everyone's so angry on it with the owners for like not going in for any players. They're like, why is no one back in Slot? And the kind of vibe that seemed to be in that community was like, have we just brought in this guy because he's just going to he can't argue with it because he doesn't really, there's managers that perhaps would have been more deserving of being Liverpool manager who would have been willing to like stamp their authority from day one, but Slot's kind of got to be happy to be there. I don't know if that's necessarily the case at all, but who knows what their playing style is? They lost their first game to Preston, and I don't think that will set the agenda for how things are going to go. But you never know. We don't know what he's got in plan for Salah. I don't even know. Like, if Salah doesn't have a good pre-season, I'm taking him out my team. Like, yeah. I'm not convinced that Salah's going to be like flying like he has done other seasons. Especially last season, I was unconvinced for half of it anyway. So I'm kind of wait and see on Liverpool. Like I agree with you. Like it could definitely be worth doubling up on the defence, particularly for them. But in terms of who the key assets are going to be going forward, I'm not entirely sure we're going to know until a few weeks into the season. And I'd be a little bit concerned of managers, maybe like Thomas Frank, just outwitting him, just like in that early stage of the season when you're like, yeah, you're not having it all your own way just because you're Liverpool manager, mate. I can't have a better game plan than you. It happens, right? We always look on paper and it always looks very easy. And then you get 5 weeks into a season and we're like, wow, Liverpool have only won 2 of their first 5. And it turns out at the end of the season, that wasn't actually that bad because somebody like Brentford's had a really good season. But this is the kind of thing that looks easy now and just might not be so straightforward when we get there.
I hear you. And today I was looking at, right, guys, in the chat, let's play a game. Give me your worst Dutchie that was amazing in the Eredivisie, but rubbish in the Premier League. Player or manager? I'll kick us off.
Frank de
Boer as a manager. Perfect example, right? I'll give you another one. Ten Hag was meant to be the next big thing. 63% win ratio in the Eredivisie. Well, Slot's got a 62% win ratio, pretty much the same. It takes these managers time, and they don't always do it. Jurgen Klopp didn't start his Liverpool campaign off with a bang. Pep Guardiola wasn't winning league titles in his first season. In terms of players, well, Kesman's a great example. I'll throw Dirk Kuyt into the mix. I know Liverpool fans wouldn't say he worked hard, but come on, he didn't score goals. Ricky Van Wolfswinkel, the guys signed for 20 million by Norwich.
Why is no one saying Anthony?
Oh, Ice Jesus come in with it. Yeah. Ryan Babel, usually drink, usually dance. Bergwijn, Van der Beek, Depay. Like, who's to say Slot comes in and smashes it early on? We just don't know, do we?
Absolutely true. You don't know. And I do think it's, a calculated risk by bringing him in as the manager. Obviously, he's worked his way up in the game and he's earned an opportunity. And the only thing that's good about Liverpool as a club for him is that if you look historically, they don't chop and change managers very often, right? They don't do that. So they do tend to give managers a chance. But you could be the next Roy Hodgson. There's always the next Roy Hodgson in waiting, right?
Yeah, true. Back a final point on Liverpool then, because we're both guilty of this, and Dean's rightly just given us the nod on it. It's purely a fixtures play at this point. But if we see pre-season that they're losing to teams like Preston on a regular basis and they're not scoring goals, we are going to be wary about that double up or triple up.
I mean, it depends on how much you read into pre-season. For example, if they look defensively poor in pre-season, then of course I don't think I'll take the risk with the double up. But for example, even if Salah does not exactly do well, I don't think that will be enough to put me off, because Salah has been a tried and tested performer in the Premier League in the past. So it depends on how much you want to read into team performances, individual
But he had
performances.
hair back then. He hasn't got any hair either now. He's shaved his hair off.
Just one point on Dean mentioning fan opinions as well. I would generally beware of fan opinions, because they tend to be let's say very emotional at times. So I'm not exactly sure that's the best way to sort of go about gauging the feel around the club at any point in time. But I sort of hear where you're coming from, because the vibes around the place might not be as good, but the fixtures are so good that you might as well chance it. So it's not something which is clear cut, and I think it's very subjective, and it depends on the kind of FPL manager you are. If for example you're a fixture manager, you might as well go with it. But if you like packing form, then you might choose to ignore such kind of players.
Well, Sean says that Salah's been playing as a 9 and in pre-season and in team training. Is that a good thing? Is Salah as a 9 something? Maybe you do back him against Ipswich, but
no. If he's playing as a I don't think. I think we've seen a couple of games of him as a 9. You want him wide right. There's a reason he doesn't play number 9 for Egypt. I
don't think that's enticing at all to know that Salah's going to be playing as a 9.
No, you want him in fairly central areas, but coming in off the wing.
Coming in, exactly. Yeah. You don't want him already there. You want him arriving in those spots rather than starting in those spots. Like, that's what I've always felt about Salah. I think that there'll be part of him and his ego as a top. You always see it that players always want to end up as the number 9, because it's regarded as the most important position in the pitch and the most pressure to bring the goals and stuff. And there's always a temptation for players to go and play there, but sometimes it just doesn't work out in your favour.
Yeah, no, it'd be a bit of a weird move for me. I mean, you could argue that in Liverpool, Darwin's more of a natural 9, but some will say he's better on the left. Gakpo is clearly better from the left. We saw that with the Dutch. And Jota, maybe even Jota doesn't know, but many will say good on the left as well, cutting in. So, and Luis Diaz, we know on the left. So interesting balance there for that Newcastle new look attack. I wonder if 4 of those 6 mentioned or 5 mentioned could even start. Guys, let's move away from my team and have a look at captaincy. Guys, there are still nearly 300 of you in the chat, and the ratio of likes to subscribes and those watching is an absolute disgrace. So if you fancy those buttons, guys, please do. If you're watching on catch up, by the way, because thousands of you do in comparison to the live, then please do drop a comment, and we'll make sure the production team at CJ are getting back to you. And likewise, if you fancy sharing that Chasing Green Arrows is a cool show, then please do share it with your.
I got dug out the other day. Did you see in the comments? Someone said Dean just sits there on his phone. He's so rude.
I replied.
I did too. I was like, mate, I'm literally sat here on my phone chatting. And when I'm not talking, I'm chatting to all the people in the talk. I'm not doing it today because I don't want to come across as rude. But now I feel rude to all the people in the chat that are asking me questions. I can't win.
I didn't know you looked at those comments. Now I'm like, what's Dean seen? Because sometimes I dig you out in those comments.
I don't. You know what? It's not that often that I go into those comments. But the other day, I'm like, we want to be more interactive and all this kind of thing. And then I saw that and I was like, oi, I'm not.
I defended you straight away. I said
he
was in the chat replying to your answers, your questions.
Absolutely.
There we go. Baka, tell us about what your sort of top line summary of these captaincy options are, because usually when we discuss captaincy, you would just think it would be a shootout between Haaland and Salah. And if you're going for one of those players, you'll captain them more often than not. But I think last season taught us Haaland's set and forget wasn't necessarily the play. And when you look at all those managers that got top 100 finishes or top 1,000 finishes, they weren't captaining Haaland or Salah every week. And actually, we should maybe look at the greater field and look at Isak or Palmer or Watkins, maybe even Saka for selected weeks. And do you think this season, you and I and content creators will be a bit more open to thinking outside the box? I mean, for the time being, with Liverpool and City fixtures, maybe we don't need to. But I certainly this season would like to look a little bit wider with captaincy.
I think from what we see in the graphic, I think Haaland, Palmer, Salah, Saka are probably a notch above Watkins and Isak. So I still think captaining Watkins or Isak would be a bit of a stretch early on the season. I still don't sort of think they are as explosive or reliable as the midfielders or Haaland. So when you look at the captaincy ticker, Salah and Saka actually rotate really, really well.
Yeah, so well.
Which is basically an argument against Haaland's captaincy, or including him in your squad. So when you look at Salah and Saka, you can get Ipswich in week 1 or even Wolves at home, which is perfectly fine. Then in game week 2, you can get Brentford at home for Salah. In game week 3, you can get Brighton at home for Saka. And then, you can just captain Salah for the next 2 weeks, Forest at home, Bournemouth at home. Then Saka has Leicester at home, Southampton at home, and then he has Bournemouth away, or Salah Chelsea at home. So the first 8 weeks, you're actually covered if you just get Salah and Saka.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually a very strong argument in going against Haaland, because with Haaland, yes, those fixtures from game week 2, 3, 4 look really, really appealing, but you can actually cover captaincy in those 3 weeks with Salah and Saka. It's a very tough balance, and this is why I think this, from whatever discussions we've had in preseason, the main point of debate before game week 1 will be whether or not you have Haaland in your team, because that is ultimately going to be the thing which will cause the biggest variance, and that will lead to big rank swings early on in the season.
Yeah, I think so too. And also, like between 5 and 6, I think that's when the first Champions League game week is. So there's that to kind of come into the equation. Now, what you would say on Haaland is like, probably helps you in terms of captaincy that they're playing Arsenal in that game week 5, because you know that he's going to have to play that game and they're going to have to keep him on to get the game won. Whereas if Haaland had an easy-ish game in game week 5, you might be like, oh, there'll be a temptation to rest him here because they're about to begin their Champions League campaign. But the fact that those are 2 tricky games, Arsenal-Newcastle, around that first Champions League fixture, actually would probably lean me towards having faith in Haaland, getting all the minutes he needs. Obviously, hasn't had the international tournament that many players have had this summer as well. But actually, when you consider all these players that we've got in front of us right now, it's only really Saka that's been out there week after week during the Euros, game after game, actually exerting himself and might have that extra minutes in his legs. And we've seen Saka at the end of last season was struggling, right? For how many weeks he was flagged, I don't even know, but it was a lot. So I don't think, for me, Saka's going to really be a captaincy option. I mean, I'll be totally honest. I don't think I'm even going to be considering picking him in those first 4 or 5 games.
He was injured in the start of the Euros when he did, and he kept coming off early in the groups and stuff. Like something was going on. He'd
got a knock in training at either the end of last season or at the beginning of England's campaign. I can't remember what it was, but he got a kick or something in training, and so that affected him too. So it keeps affecting him. So that's what I think. In terms of Haaland being a set and forget, I actually think I would consider it, because I would even throw Arsenal and Newcastle in there as games where I would trust him. And now, obviously, that's a risk because the guys that are alongside him here have good fixtures in those weeks. But if we get the old Haaland back, it doesn't matter who's playing.
Baka, we haven't mentioned Foden. For those going against Haaland, like me, Foden's a lock in my team. And I feel like if you're going against Haaland, you should cover the Man City attack. And I know that's not a makeup of your current squad, but Foden's also a legit captaincy option for those backing against Haaland. So, for example, yeah, sure, you can go Salah quite a bit. But let's say game week 3, you don't want to go Salah at Old Trafford, which, by the way, you probably should consider Salah at Old Trafford. He often does well there. Sorry, I know you guys think I always call United out, but
you do.
They haven't been great. But Foden against West Ham at home is also a really nice fixture for Foden. So he's also an option. And should we have included Sonny on this chart? Son is 10% owned. He has been a reliable captain alternative for us in the past, but no one's really speaking about Spurs attack or Son. He's only 10% owned. Is that a player or a team you've looked at?
Not necessarily. I mean, Spurs they sort of blew hot and cold last season, and I think until I sort of see further evidence of Spurs being in form, I'm not exactly considering Son. Coming to Foden, I am not necessarily looking at him as a pick to cover the City attack, because when I compare him with Saka and Palmer, we had this, a very brief discussion in our previous podcast where I mentioned that I prefer Saka and then Palmer to Foden. So for me, Foden is not exactly a captaincy choice, because if I prefer Saka to him, then I would rather own Saka, and I would rather actually captain Saka in game week 3 when he has Brighton at home when compared to Foden, who has West Ham at home. And I just think Saka is more integral to the Arsenal team, and he's just more better for minutes and has more routes to points as opposed to Foden.
Yeah, fair play. And in terms of being in your team, though, at the moment, Odegaard's someone you put in your original draft, I think. Do you think Saka's going to find a way in?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I like Odegaard, and I think he will be good value, but I do think that Saka's worth the 1.5 more. So I will do my best to fit Saka in my team.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, for example, if Calafiori comes in 5.5 million, that will help massively.
Yeah, it will. Yeah.
That's something that, I have been eyeing up.
Dean, Isak has Southampton at home on the opening day. If you're not sure about Salah and Liverpool and you don't want to go Haaland away at Chelsea, Isak Southampton at home feels like a really, really nice captain option. Like Isak last season was amazing when he played, and that is as good a fixture as you'll find on the opening day because St James's Park for Newcastle, this Eddie Howe Newcastle team has been such a fortress.
Yeah, I guess my dilemma with Haaland will be that if I'm spending 15 million on him from game week 1, am I really going to have a 15 million player and not captain him? That will be the biggest dilemma. But I am going to have Isak as well. And I will genuinely be looking at that fixture thinking, well, Isak's the most likely to bang here. I don't know what Chelsea are anymore is the problem, mate. I don't know. To me, it looks like a terrible pre-season. The players you're signing, I've genuinely never heard of.
And they're falling out.
They're falling out with each other. You've got Enzo, who should be your best player, and half the squad hates him. It's chaos. You've got a coach who's a good coach, obviously, but is he ready for this? Yeah. It's very weird. It's like managing a nursery school, isn't it? Watching Chelsea be put together every year. It's like a new term time, not a new football season. And I just don't know what to get. The only thing that is kind of bomb-proof with Chelsea is Cole Palmer. So that's the one thing that you can rely on because we've seen whether it's Chelsea or England, it doesn't matter how the team's performing, he will perform. So you can rely on him as an asset, and that's why he's going to be so good in this game. But yeah, for Haaland going into that Chelsea fixture, it will be a tough call because Isak against Southampton, who's I'd say as much of a guarantee as you could get that game week as to getting a goal scorer on the board.
It does feel like that. Bacca, what's your take on squeezing Palmer into your team? Dean's obviously really hot on him. I would love a way. He's the 16th player, the one player I just can't get in, and I've got to find a way. Are you that close to him? Because you saw what he did last year. You know the reliability, even in the Euros and Chelsea last year. Teams don't have to function well for Palmer to get points.
So, I mean, in my current draft, I'm on Odegaard, as you mentioned. And I think if I'm sort of making some sacrifices elsewhere, I think realistically the closest I can get is to Saka as opposed to Palmer because Palmer's 0.5 more expensive. Yeah. I like Palmer, and I think he's a great pick especially for that run between game week 2 and 7. And he's possibly even a captaincy option in some of those weeks. Yeah. Actually, he can rotate well with Salah as well. And I would feel more confident captaining him as opposed to Watkins or Isak or Foden in certain weeks because I just think Palmer is a notch above some of these players. So as much as I like Palmer, the problem is going to be whether or not I can afford him. And I just think I will possibly fall 0.5 short. That's going to be the likely scenario, I think, as of now.
Oh, interesting one. Guys, let us know your take on sort of first 10 game weeks in captaincy. I do agree with Bacca that Palmer, there's a couple of weeks there where you just go, oh, maybe he could be the go-to captain. It is worth noting, Ollie Watkins and Palmer are both at 56% owned so far. Isak, I think, is like 54. They are the 3 most popular players in the game by a country mile. The likes of Salah and Haaland, they're at 30% plus. Comments, guys, get them in before the end of the show. Adam says Palmer on lock. Palmer deserves a proper club, should leave, says Gezi. Yeah, I mean, how would he be functioning in this Man City team right now is scary. I wonder what Pep thinks to that. Yeah, just perma captain Haaland, says Notorious Nerd. And maybe for those that go there, the 30% that do go Haaland, that will just be a legit option. And I completely understand why. I'm sure Marco Silva could find a place for Palmer, says Colm, the Fulham fan. Well, you might make do with Smith Rowe. Dean, I've got a transfer question for you, and it is about Smith Rowe because he is 5 million or 5.5 million, I think. Reece Nelson is 5 and could go to West Ham. Good FPL option. But Smith Rowe at 5.
Yeah.
If he goes to Palace, I mean, even if he goes to Fulham, like, good option.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, there's nobody out in there in the game who's going to be picking Emil Smith Rowe. But he makes a transfer to a club like Fulham and Palace, and he's suddenly like one of the main men in that team. You think of the way that both of those sides need another creative force, a midfielder that's going to play week after week as an attacker, but also take a step up in terms of their status within a team. Obviously, you'd look at it and say Arsenal to Fulham or Palace is a step down. But is it as an individual, when you consider what your role is at Arsenal, which is pretty much nothing and nobody really cares if you're there or not, to being elevated to being a guaranteed starter week in, week out? Reece Nelson, I'm not so sure until we would see it. But Emil Smith Rowe, there are people at Arsenal that still aren't sure it's a good idea to even get rid of Smith Rowe. He's that good. But they also see that he doesn't really fit in with the project because they're trying to move beyond how good he actually is. But he's right on the cusp of being like that good. I think Smith Rowe could be an interesting one because of his valuation in the game. But let's wait to see if they can get the transfer over the line first.
Dean, while you're here, I'd sort of like to take the opportunity to actually talk about Andres Pereira as well. As a Fulham fan, I know you're a very avid Fulham fan, and you must have seen that, you know, when you're making those Haaland and Salah drafts, you have to sort of compromise the midfield. And Andres Pereira is someone I want to talk to you about because he's 5.5 million only. If he's a regular starter in the Fulham team on set pieces, on penalties, then he's not a bad enabler. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he definitely is. I'd say him and Anthony Robinson are the two best Fulham assets you would go for at the moment. I know people are like trying to throw Muniz into the conversation, but I think that's way more of a gamble than Andreas or Robinson in terms of output. Andreas, like, he's been linked with Chelsea at the moment, which I don't think that's happening. I mean, he was linked with somebody else as well at the start of the summer, so I don't know his agent particularly, but I wonder if that's just an agent at play because Andreas has seen the other key players around him moving on. He had a good combination with Mitrovic. He's been used to playing with Palhinha behind him. Both of those guys now gone. So Andreas' own status within the Fulham team is lifted. But yeah, he's very important to the way that team flows. Marco Silva definitely won't want him going. And I think will make even more of a point of making sure that he's important to the way that attack goes. So he will be on the set pieces. He will get a chance on pens. And I think, 5.5, you're probably right to see him as a guy that can open up some other room in your squad, but also give you a good option to turn to.
Yeah, and Bakri's got good fixtures. Fulham right at the top of the ticker, aren't they?
Yeah. Exactly. The fixtures are nice. And I assume Willian is close to leaving as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Willian is not expected to be there. We lost Bobby Reid, who doesn't sound very significant to most people. Bobby Reid was a rotator in that Fulham attack last season, so that's now gone. So yeah, Andreas is the sole creator, really.
Yeah, that's what I was going to come to. So it could be insane value at 5.5 million. I mean, a couple of seasons ago, he was a very popular asset in the FPL community when he was just 4.5.
Yeah,
I think
that's
at
right.
5.5 with good fixtures and just the fact that he can act as an enabler for a Trent, Haaland, Salah draft. I mean, it's not the worst idea.
I always think Fulham start the season well, Dean, as well. Like they certainly have the last couple of seasons, haven't they? I seem to think under Marco Silva, they're quite quick starters.
Yeah, we've done all right, and it's we've had some good results and against some good teams as well. I mean, I remember last season, I think it was last season, when we had Liverpool, we drew with them at the start of the season, should have beaten them. We do cause surprises. Like, it wouldn't be that big a surprise for Fulham to go to Old Trafford on the first day and actually win, or at least get a draw. Like, that shouldn't happen because Man United are an upgraded version of what they are last season, but they're also a new team. What you are getting from Fulham is, at the moment, because we haven't signed anyone, you're getting just a team of players that know each other inside out, know exactly what they need to do. They've already won at Old Trafford recently. It's plausible that they could go there with a game plan that actually works and kind of rattles Ten Hag from game week 1. I'm not necessarily expecting it. It just wouldn't necessarily surprise me. ISG says Harry Wilson becomes a regular. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, Harry Wilson can be a bit flaky. He's not a very consistent player. I love him when he's on form, but I can also remember shouting from the terraces that I never want to see him in a Fulham shirt again from time to time. You call me emotional if you like, but yeah. But he is a good player, but I just don't think he'll be trusted to start every game week, Harry Wilson.
Nice. Okay, definitely one to monitor. Thank you guys, as always, for your input. CH has just joined, so she didn't get a notification. We'll be on rewatch after. Sorry about that, CH. I don't know.
You were missed. It's on a good time for you as well.
Yeah. I don't know if CH didn't get the notification and no one got a notification, but maybe I can't believe that was the case. Maybe it was just you today. But yeah, we'll be back on Friday for another stream. What we're looking to do pre-season, guys, is Monday streams at 7 p.m. this time slot. Fridays will be around lunchtime. And guys, we've got a treat for you because from tomorrow and on Wednesday and on Thursday, you can see CGA content on YouTube that's pre-recorded. That's small 15-minute videos featuring the three of us. Keep your notifications on for those videos dropping from tomorrow. We're very excited about that. Dean will be speaking more about transfers. I'll be speaking about some differentials. Baka, what are you speaking about this week?
I'm speaking about the top essential tips to build your Game Week 1 squad.
Oh, love that. Oh, we've got something for everyone. Something for everyone. So yeah, guys, hit the buttons, like and subscribe on the way out. And that notification is more important than ever before. We'll be back live on Friday, but with more pre-recorded content tomorrow. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Thank you to Big Man. Thank you to Dean. For now, we will say goodbye and we'll see you tomorrow.